Welcome back to the channel, and I've got an interesting car problem in today. It's a little bit different, not your usual car problem. I've got a 2002 Polo, it's a 1.4 petrol, and it's got the EPC light on. It's got the EPC light on for a very good reason. It's very, very slow. The customer complaint is that they were driving along on the motorway and just kept getting slower and slower and slower. They managed to get it home, EPC light on, and I think the engine management light came on. Now the customer plugged it in themselves and it had an EGR fault and a fault code because they got one of those OBD dongles. So they tried cleaning the EGR and it's got much worse. So we've got an EPC light that comes straight back on. They have cleared the codes on EPC light. It's quite interesting to see what the car does. So here we have the car. Now this is a good car. It's been in recently for a service. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's quite old. It's 22 years old, but very low miles for the year, only 48,000. Start her up. Now, once it sort of sorted itself out a little bit, idle's perfectly fine, but if I try and accelerate, bearing in mind I'm off the air on the ramp, you get a few revs, that's fine. If I put my foot right down, a horrible clackety noise, and then that's foot flat to the floor, and we just, it's just hopeless. And it just won't rev up, and we get the EPC light on and it dies. So I've got my computer plugged in, and I've got VCDS operating, so let's go and see what VCDS says about this. So we're on VCDS now and got the ignition on, engine not running. Let's look at fault codes. Okay, look, so got one fault code here. Now I believe that when the car was driving we also had an EGR code, but one fault code at the moment, which is P1553, implausible correlation between barometric and manifold pressure signals. Now, that's an interesting code because a lot of people, I think, would change the manifold pressure sensor. But let's go and have a look at the car and see what's going on. Okay, so we're under the bonnet of the car, and what are those two sensors the ECU is telling us about? Well, there's one sensor in here, and both sensors are what's called absolute pressure sensors, rather than gauge pressure sensors. In a total vacuum, they'd read 0, and they'd read all the way up to, I don't know, 2 bar or something. But this one will be saying manifold pressure, air pressure of 1000 millibar. And we've got one on the inlet manifold under here, measures the pressure in the inlet manifold. Now, as this is a non-turbocharged engine, with wide open throttle, this one and this one should read the same thing at wide open throttle. And at idle, this one should read a much lower value because the throttle valve is shut and there'll be a vacuum created in the inlet manifold. But we're getting an implausible correlation code. So I think the thing to do now is to start the car up again and have a look at live data. So we've got the car idling and we see it is pulling a vacuum here. So we've got quite high intake manifold pressure for idle, and we've got a height correction factor of only -1%. So what it's seeing now is we're seeing just normal barometric pressure. It's actually pegged to the sensor. It's gone to just 1000 millibar, and we're getting no revs at all, and nothing happening. So what do we know? We know that it's seeing a normal atmospheric pressure. It's only 1% different. It doesn't actually give us a value, but we know that's going to be about 1000 millibar. And it's saying it's implausible to the inlet manifold pressure. So what could be going on there? Well, that's just weird. Essentially what it's saying is I'm not drawing the vacuum I'm expecting. There should be quite a high vacuum in the inlet manifold, and it's just not seeing that vacuum. The sensor is correct because with the engine off you get 1000 millibar. So I have two ideas what the problem can be. I don't think we've got an inlet blockage. You can hear the throttle valve opening very, very wide, but it not revving up. I don't think we've got any blockage on the intake because we're seeing high pressure. If you had a blockage, you'd get low pressure. But you might have a timing issue, and on this engine it's very easy to check the timing. So I'm going to give that a go now. Okay, so I've got my timing mark lined up here with here. And that cam is timed up. And that cam is timed up. Now I know a screwdriver is not the proper timing tool, but it's good enough. We're certainly in time. So I think the problem is that the exhaust is blocked, and I've got my suspicions for that because there are funny noises coming from the exhaust, like something's rattling around. But we can have a look at that underneath. Okay, so I think the exhaust is blocked. If I do this, I can hear there's something loosened in here. Now these vehicles have two catalysts. This is the main cat, but there's also another little cat up here. And in fact, I know from experience on this car that this cat and this cat, the back pressure caused by the system, forces exhaust gases into the EGR valve. So the EGR valve is a little bit of a clue here as to what the problem is, because the EGR code is actually sort of something to do with it, I think, because we're getting too much flow through the EGR. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to loosen these nuts here. So that should clear the blockage now. And it's going to be very noisy, but we'll start it up and see if that EPC light comes on when you try and rev it. Okay, so I've cleared the code, so I've got the windows up because it's going to be very loud. I'm going to start it now. So there we are, it's loud, but it did start fine. I'm going to try revving it up. And you see it revs fine, and we get no EPC light. So it's definitely a blocked exhaust. So I'm going to fit that new catalytic converter to the car, and we'll see what that brings. Hopefully that's fixed all our problems. So no issues at all, apart from it being horrendously loud, but we've not got an EPC light flashing back on. So I'm going to take the cat off, put a new one on, see how we get on. Okay, so out of interest, I've cut the old cat apart, and it's actually fine in there, but blocked. Seems to be blocked with something, and what seems to have blocked it is catalyst, these sort of weird segmented bits, and this is where the plot thickens. So if I look up at the Manny cat, there's nothing in there at all. It's completely empty. So what's happened is this Manny cat, this pre-cat has failed, and it's blocked the main cat. So it's going to actually have two cats now, which is a bit annoying. There we go. I thought I'd compare the new and old parts. These are exactly the same part number from the same supplier. Unfortunately, I've got to put another one of these aftermarket cats back on. It's prohibitively expensive to get genuine cats, so this is the only option on a car that's 22 years old. I mean, really prohibitively expensive, like thousands of pounds expensive. So you see the old one, that's not actually that old, it's under 2 years old. It's got no monolith. And the new one has got a monolith in there, so no idea what happened. This is obviously filled up from there to there with a small pre-cat. And don't know where it's gone, don't know what happened. If you've got any ideas, let me know. This car's not had any fault codes since I fitted it. Fitted this one sort of 18 months ago. And I only fitted it because it had an EGR code, and this cured it. And there's a TSB about it. It says you've got an EGR code, insufficient flow, change the cats, because you'll get more back pressure and it will force the gases through the EGR. So it's got a new EGR. All of that works fine. Recently serviced, no issues. This has fallen to bits and damaged the main cat as well. So going to fit this and the new main underbody cat, and then run a series of tests, and hopefully that will be the end of the problems. So we've got the new caps on, and I've warmed it all up. I've got the burny bits of paper for that. New clamp, no code so far, so that's good. What does seem to be interesting though is I did have a couple of misfires, so I think it's got a bad injector or coil, and I wonder whether the misfires at at load rather than at idle like I've just done. Misfires at load damaged this monolith. So car is running, no codes, and the readiness all passed apart from this. I think it needs a bit more time. I got the under tray back on, I sorted that rattle out, and I'm going to test drive it, take it back to the customer. They need it back, but I'm going to investigate further into that misfire, because I think that does make sense. A lot of unburnt fuel damaging the monolith, causing that monolith to collapse, go down into here, block that up, and then create that running issue. So hopefully won't happen again, but yeah, there's obviously a failure, sort of cascading failure going on in this car. It is 22 years old. It's very low miles. It's always been well looked after though. So I'm going to try some fuel cleaner. It's not misfiring now, but it was earlier. So anyway, that's all for now, I think. Thanks for watching.